Good afternoon, Jason here, Birchfield Family Farm, Oxford, Ohio. I have a good word for you today. This comes from 2 Corinthians. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. We're going to be talking about an issue that we had here the past few weeks on the farm with our St Croix sheep. It's pregnancy toxemia, also sometimes called twin lamb disease. I'm going to go over exactly what we dealt with. We did involve a vet, our protocol, the outcome, and then some of the future thoughts for the future and things that we'll be looking for. Before we do that, I want to take a walk here and I want to tell you an encouraging story. A few years back, we were having trouble with our lambs. They were maybe 60 days old, and we were losing. I had lost a few, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking. And in the midst of that, I can remember I had one that was very, very ill. We had involved the vet, but this particular case, he was not there yet, and I was holding this one by a water hydrant, I remember, and it was down, and I'm holding it, and Another lady shows up. We'll call her B for the purposes of this story here. And B comes over, and we start to talk, and we begin to pray for this animal. B is a great woman of faith, and we put our hands on the sheep and begin to ask the Lord to heal and to restore. And not long after that, we're in the process of praying here for this animal, and another family shows up. And this other family, this mom comes over and explain what's happening and what we're doing. And she joins us, and not long after that, she becomes visibly emotional, a little shaken. And so we begin to talk with her about what's happening. And her brother-in-law at the time had been diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and his son was actually there on the farm that day, and she was moved. And so immediately B switches the prayer up, and it begins to be about this man who has the cancer, and praying for him and for his healing, restoration. Anyhow, everybody goes on about their day that day. We end up losing the sheep. It passes away. And fast forward a couple years later, and this was just a few months back, and the gentleman that we prayed for with the cancer, he's not doing well. He's hospitalized, and obviously doesn't appear to have long. And the mom that was there, it was her brother-in-law, so the mom's husband, heads up to see his brother, and ends up on his brother's deathbed, ends up praying with him, leading him to Christ. And then the little boy who was here that day, his dad passes away, and the little boy says, I want to pray that too. Wow. I want to pray that prayer. I want to follow Jesus also. Wow. This blew me away. So we look at that situation from a carnal standpoint, from a laying on of the hands on an animal, asking and not receiving. We look at it from that narrow-minded perspective, and it's easy to be discouraged, easy to think that we're not being heard. But then you zoom out and you look at this from an eternal perspective, and it's absolutely mind-blowing, and it's mysterious to me. And you've heard us talk here before about this three-way connection that we believe in here on the farm, this connection to God, this connection to each other, community, but then also this connection to the ground. And I think with these instances, I can look back and you see the Lord, and you can see this intersection at times, right? The way that these stories intersect in this web of connection. It is mysterious. It's way beyond my pay grade. But it's wonderful. And I want to give an encouragement today to, if you're experiencing hard times in the moment, not to give up. Keep pressing on, keep asking, and don't give up. Don't give up. The Christian life, what we've come to learn here on the farm is it's rarely all rainbows and unicorns. We have difficulties, and I'm going to be talking about one of those such things here that we experienced over the past week. But I'm putting this out there because I have the faith to do that. I believe that the Lord wants me to, and I believe He'll work in this. I don't know how, I can't see it, but I have faith. And that's all I'm going on. And I think it'll help someone. Hopefully it does. But we're in a unique hour as well. And with this experience, we did lose a sheep. We lost a mama, absolutely heartbreaking. And in these times, I try and take time away and press in and ask the Lord, what are you saying? What do you want me to know? Are we off? Just quieting my spirit and listening. And I hear Him say in this hour, death changes nothing about my lordship. Death changes nothing about my lordship. And so that being said, let's talk about the past week. And we dealt with something called pregnancy toxemia. Basically, did a video. Last video I did was maybe a week ago, maybe a little more. And we were 2.5 weeks out from lambing at that point, and I ran the sheep across the farm because I just had a feeling that, hey, I need to get them kind of in, look them over. We've got a small pasture up front, and I thought, I like keeping them up there. I like lambing up there because it's a smaller pasture. I can keep an eye on them, but there's also a busy road. And I feel like that road, just because it's so busy, it keeps a lot of the predators away and has helped us out in that regard. And so I like having them up there. And so I ran them up there it would be a week ago Tuesday. Today is Friday. And then everybody was fine. Doing just fine. Everybody on their feet, nobody dragging. Everybody looked good. Come out that next day, Wednesday, and we've got a ewe down. So what I like to do whenever I discover that an animal has gone down, two things. First thing I like to do is I like to just look them over. Are there any cuts, scrapes, any kind of predator marks or anything, any way they've been roughed up externally? I like to look them over there. Did not see anything with her. And so next I like to take a temperature. I like to get that rectally, and took a temperature on her, and no fever, no high temp. She was normal. So that's kind of telling me, okay, probably not something like an infection internally, though you don't know for sure. But immediately, looking at her, couldn't lift her head. She was down, and immediately I ran for the electrolytes, right? I'm thinking, okay, big mama here. We're 2.5 weeks out. She needs some help nutritionally. So I hit her with some electrolytes. I thought, let's give us a little time here. Come back hour later or so, and no improvement whatsoever. So it was at this point that I decided, hey, I need to bring in some help here to try and save her and figure this out. And so called the vet. Thankfully, he was able to had a break in his schedule, was able to get out to us that same day, and came out. And the things that I had done seemed to be helpful, letting him know there was no temperature. And I had also had seen pregnancy toxemia was on my radar here because we were so close to lambing, and so we'd never dealt with this before. But I saw where you can use a ketone meter. Ours was just $20 from the store, no big deal, but you can use this ketone meter and you can test their ketone levels. Now, I've got lots of different thoughts on this. Supposedly, there's this range with ketosis and ketones. You guys that have done the ketogenic diet are probably familiar with this. But basically, when the system is through or done or has used up all the glucose, then the body starts making these ketones. Well, it's the same thing with sheep. Only with sheep, it gets very dangerous when they're producing lots of ketones. And so there's a range. Conventionally speaking, there's a range. And it goes in millimoles per liter. Anything below a 0.8 considered normal. 0.8 to a 3.0 is considered subclinical, and anything above a 3 is considered dangerous. You need to get right on it. And so had tested her, and our meter tests in milligrams per deciliter, so you have to make a conversion there, dividing the milligrams per deciliter by an 18. She tested a 51, and this was before the vet got there. And so I knew she was a little bit elevated. I believe that converts to like a 2.8 maybe. And so passing that info along to the vet, that was helpful. Letting him know there was no fever. She is in ketosis. And so that gave us a pretty good starting point, at least for him. So he comes out, assesses the situation, and then immediately begins an IV. And he is treating her with dextrose. So just a bag of elevated dextrose lets gravity drain in. And before long, actually even before he left, she had popped up. And we were all very encouraged by that. The fact that she had got up and, just kind of stepping back and, thinking, okay, maybe this turns out favorably here. In the meantime, I had sent my wife down and she picked up a bottle of propylene glycol. Basically, vet was saying with glycol, it's not all about glucose, but she wants some energy. She needed energy. So the glycol supposedly gives energy, also helps to remove the ketones. There is a school of thought out there now that if you get too much glycol, it can mess with the rumen. That is what it is. Vet gave us a recommended dosage of 60 cc's 3 times a day. So, we talk about lambing here quite a bit. But, lambing, it's occurring to me, lambing really starts before lambs hit the ground. Especially in this case, having a lot of this stuff on hand would be helpful. So I will, we've got the ketone meter now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit, but also that glycol and keeping that on hand for such instances. So vet leaves, we're administering this glycol 3 times a day. She makes it through the night, Wednesday night. We get to Thursday, and just not well at all. We give, I think, 2 doses that day. We'd gotten through 2 doses of glycol, and she passed away. Pretty heartbreaking to lose a sheep of any kind, but a sheep, 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away from lambing, just rips your heart out. Very tough. But let's talk about what we dealt with here: pregnancy toxemia. Got some good information from the vet. With sheep, typically they're going to show signs of toxemia before lambing. With cattle show signs of this after calving. And he did mention that. So it's very rare for a sheep to show toxemia after lambing. I thought that was interesting. Basically, pregnancy toxemia it's a metabolic condition. So we're talking about how the animal is able to take food and convert it into chemical energy. Something is off there. Vet mentioned you can have, typically it's very, very skinny animals or very, very fat animals is what he sees it in those two differences. We both agreed with the St Croix sheep right now this time of year, it is impossible to body condition score them with all of the hair. Well, we both agreed on that. Nonetheless, you could look at her and you could see she was the biggest ewe. I mean, without a doubt. And so, basically with this condition, what happens is the lambs are growing. The lambs put on 80% of their growth. They do 80% of their growth in the last 6 weeks of gestation. Incredible. And so it's actually called twin lamb disease because it occurs usually in mamas that have twins or more, triplets or quads. And, basically you've got these fast growing lambs, and so you need 2 and 3 times the nutritional requirements, but they're growing and they're putting pressure on the stomach, and so it's uncomfortable for her to eat. She doesn't want to eat as much, and so you have this pressure kind of from both ways, and with some mamas it's just too much. The other thing here, we are all grass-fed, and I know we operate on pretty thin margins at times. We don't think that she was on the skinny side. If anything, she was probably a little bit heavy. But saying all that to say that it would be easy in this case to take a situation like this out of context and completely overreact. It is tempting, right? To step back and say, oh, we need to change everything about what we're doing, nutrition and blah, blah, blah. And it's just such an extreme circumstance. But if we take it within context, and what do I mean by that? Well, and this is again why I encourage you to keep really good lambing records on weights. Her weights on her lambs every single year, she had the heaviest weights. And I remember one year, almost like a 10-pound ram, and in the moment it seems great. But looking back now and looking at this whole experience, am I saying a mama that throws a big lamb now and then is no, but it was every single year she had her biggest ones. And so that's kind of changing my perspective on large lambs. I think it's within the St Croix kind of community, lambing and sheep community, I see on some of the forums like people posting when they have really big animals, and I think it's kind of a temptation to go that route to breed for size, because we know, St Croix, if there is a downside, they are a smaller carcass, if we compare to like a Dorper. And so knowing that and having this experience, I think, is changing my view, though, on breeding for large size. And, would I rather have a mama that throws huge lambs and only lasts, 4 seasons or so? Or do I want a mama that throws a little less than heavy, but is around for many more years lambing? Obviously, it's that second case. And so, I'm focused more on as a commercial producer, more on parasite resistance. That's what I want to see. All grass fed. I want grass. Obviously, we've got grass fed genetics, animals that thrive on grass. That's what we're about here, and that's what we'll continue to be about. And the unfortunate truth is, even if she did make it through, she was probably a meat animal. After having an experience like this, I don't want to deal with this again. And we've talked about that, how farmer has to be the predator to maintain healthy flocks and herds. So that's our experience. I did want to talk a bit about the ketone meter. Very intriguing to me, this meter. I think I saw a merino producer online recommending using this ketone meter. Very inexpensive, $20. You buy the strips, get them at a regular drugstore, and it spits out a quantitative reading, right? I'm just poking a little drop of blood off the ear. Beta hydroxybutyrate, I think, is what this measures, and that's a pretty reliable indicator on ketone levels. That measurement from the blood. However, I have questions, and a lot of times these circumstances bring more questions than answers, right? And, one of my questions is, initially, after she was down, that's when I got the reading of a 51 on the meter. And, that does indicate some elevation there, sure. But, it wasn't until later on that night and even into the next day that she got really, really high, into even above 200. I mean, she was very high. So if I would have relied on this meter initially, I don't know that it would have given me an indicator. I don't know if that makes any sense, but in other words, she was showing her symptoms were showing up, before I think we'd see that on the meter. And what I mean by that is I went back and tested a few of my ewes that are not having issues, and one of them is my best mama. Tested her, and she blew a 44 on that meter, which technically would be high, subclinical, I believe. Tested another younger ewe, who I believe is in lamb, first year. She was at a 61, and obviously not showing no symptoms, no signs, no nothing. And then I thought, okay, well, this will be the real test. Let's test the ram. So Brutus, my big boy ram, I got him by the head and a little drop of blood on the ear, tested him, and he was a 64. He was the highest out of all of them. Now, obviously Brutus is not expecting. Obviously, Brutus is not in pregnancy toxemia. So why is he blowing a level that is serious, considered serious for this metabolic condition? I don't know. That's perplexing to me. And so varying thoughts on the meter. I'm wondering if, because it was a merino wool producer and she feeds grain, if, her numbers are going to be different than mine. I looked up some info and there seemed to be a pretty straightforward, these levels, right, for all sheep, it was saying. But I just wonder if diet affects this, if the breed of sheep affects this. Wondering too if, could we develop something specific for St Croix, and could we add maybe like a glucose? This meter does glucose as well, the little glucose strips. Could we do ketone testing and a glucose test and come up with would that round out the equation a little more on, what we're looking for, and being able to more easily quantify this toxemia? I don't know. Just questions that I have. It's been a week. And still moving through this. We're looking forward to lambing. A week from tomorrow we should kick off. And so appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening, and I hope there's something you can take away from this. You have questions, comments. Maybe you test ketones and glucose in your sheep and you have experience with this. Weigh in. Let us know what you think, what's going on. And enjoy this holiday resurrection weekend with your family. And thanks for being here. And God bless you, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care. Forgot to mention in the field, we've talked about the importance of good lambing records, but we knew this particular ewe was only about 130 days into gestation. The vet would not take the lambs ahead of time here because he said anything below 140 days, he said, just will not have much of a chance. So 80% mortality rate with pregnancy toxemia for the mama. If she does make it, typically lambs do not. Again, tough one. Hope this helps somebody, and we're looking forward to the upcoming lambing season, and we'll keep you posted.